Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, there he is.
You hear
What's
me?
up? How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
How's my audio? Is it terrifyingly bad or?
It's loud. Hold on a second. How's mine?
Yours is great.
There's a little bit of wind because I'm out in the wild right now.
That's good. That was the first question I was going to ask you, actually. Where are you at right now?
I'm near my home
Cool.
on the Northern California coast, just south of San Francisco. And I'm looking at the Pacific right now.
Perfect.
I'm walking along a trail that I frequent, and it eventually will come up to a wooden bench, and I'll sit there and talk to you. That's my plan, anyway.
That's a good plan. I like it.
So you're gonna hear a little bit of wind. I think I got my earbuds in, but I gotta keep walking. I'm gonna walk this pandemic, the entire thing.
That's
like a marathon.
Yeah, it's like a marathon, you know?
So how's your pandemic going?
Oh, I can't complain. How far are you from your rock, you think?
Why is it loud? I'm
just curious.
I'm on my bench.
You made it? You made it there? Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of wanted to start more officially. I'm going to start this in a little bit more centered sense. Well, for those of you who haven't figured out who we're talking to, this is Ed Annunziata, the creator of Ecco the Dolphin, amongst a number of other really awesome games that are generation defining, both for humans and for consoles. I mean, I think the entire world shifted a bit when games were less about just shoot 'em ups for a second there, and that you made that possible. But yeah, Ed, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, talking to me.
Thanks for coming back, man. Cool.
Thanks for saying nice things about me.
It's an unusual, the way you think about things. For instance, earlier we were talking about the human organism, and these are deep, profound philosophical questions. They're not just. I think when people think about video games, they don't necessarily know how deep the creators can be. I think people kind of, if they've ever played Ecco the Dolphin, can assume you're probably pretty deep. It's a pretty deep game. But
that's also a very good pun.
It's true. The game is about going as deep as you can go. I mean, realistically, because deep into the dolphin hole. But yeah, I mean, so I kind of just wanted to we've been talking for almost a year now about random things. I was so surprised that you'd moved to where I'm from. And I was at the time living really close to where you were from. And it was such an important game to me. It was such an important part of my life. Lilly, I lived in the town where John C. Lilly was living. So there's just all these things were making me hey, I have to reach out to this guy. I have to find Ed Annunziata. And, you were approachable. And then I was like, wow, this is more interesting than just my questions about the game. Who is Ed Annunziata? At first, when I wanted to do this, I was going to ask you, what led you to making Ecco? But let's go a little deeper and be where did you come from? Where did you grow up into? And what gave you, why did you decide you wanted to do what you did with your life, even more broad?
Wow. All right. So I was born a poor Italian boy in the Bronx in 1962. August, same month as Spider-Man, the same issue number 1 of Spider-Man came out in New York right when I was born. So he's my bro. And I grew up in the Bronx, and I used to go out and play by myself at 5 years old in the Bronx. And it was a different world then. It was probably 10 times more dangerous than the world is today, but there was no way to see that. So it felt safer. So my mom, who was 17 at the time. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. I was born and she was 17. And then I was 5. How old was she? She carry the one. 22. So she's 22. She says, go out and play. And I'm 5 years old, and where I go is the Bronx. And as I'm walking out the door, she'd often say, "Don't get hurt," as an order. I should not get hurt. So it worked. She was a good mom. So grew up in the Bronx, and then eventually we moved upstate New York, like north of Manhattan, like near the White Plains area, and up the Taconic Parkway. And I grew up with my family there with horses. My dad raced harness racing horses, standardbred racing horses in Yonkers Raceway. He was really into it. He did it all his life, and he was really good at it. And, really helped me think about nature and science and that kind of, like, really leaned me towards nature and animals, etc.
Were you interacting with like horses much?
Yes, a lot. That the thing, if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you're a master at that thing. So I'm a master at just like looking at horses.
Wow.
just sort of connecting with them. I know them very, very well. In fact, one day I am going to build like the perfect virtual pet / horse simulation / horse racing game.
Dude, that's far out.
Yeah, it's very cool. So then I was like gonna be a veterinarian. That was the perfect occupation for me. And so tried to do well in school in order to do that. Struggled a lot because most of school, was boring. I only really responded to the math and science. And there was no computers at all. No one had computers. But then I had one. I got a little computer Timex.
Now, Timex brings the power of the computer within reach of more people than ever before.
It's not Timex, it's Sinclair ZX81.
Nice.
ZX Spectrum Sinclair, una gamma di computer per cominciare e per continuare.
Sinclair's new ZX Spectrum Action Pack has a powerful 128K home computer, a joystick, 6 very different games, and a deadly accurate light gun.
I ordered in the mail, and there you could get it as a kit and solder it yourself, or pay a little extra and get it already made. I opted for that.
Power to learn at the speed of light. Power to organize with unfailing accuracy.
And I learned the Z80 chip with that. And then I got an Atari 800. And then I started, playing with machine language, which was assembly language. And started making a game with my best friend, Mike Marsico. And we made this game called Pyramid Run, and we sold it. And this was a hobby. In parallel, I still wanted to be a veterinarian, and I started to go to SUNY Delhi, which was upstate New York, grade school. And I dropped out because we sold the video game, and I just dove into that. The hobby became the career. And then my entire life, I've been making video games since Ronald Reagan was president.
When our citizens are abused or attacked anywhere in the world on the direct orders of a hostile regime, we will respond so long as I'm in this Oval Office. Self-defense is not only our right, it is our duty.
Back to the future stuff. Well, I mean, so wait, Pyramid Run is like the pink purple one?
Yeah, it was a very old 8-bit game, Atari 800 was what it was running on.
It's a trip to think about the Z80A now, an 8-bit processor that was 3.5 megahertz, what you were able to do with it then. So you grew up with a lot of restraints on your tech and kind of created some really, like, obviously out of the box stuff with it. What led you into thinking bigger?
Part of my problem is I don't think bigger. Well, what I think is like just off. I think I'm slightly insane. And, normally you go north, and I go a couple degrees to the right and do something weird. Like, if
true
it's
north?
yeah, right. Exactly. I'm always going magnetic north, not true north. So I'm always off a little. Like, it's like, it has to be weird or unusual or have an odd challenge or have a weird like tech idea. Like, I love the games, like the indie games where they just sign up to a rule like, this is strictly top down. with really long but accurately cast shadows, very opaque. And it's like, just stick to that, and it becomes beautiful because the game embraces a hard and not forced upon you limitation. It's like, okay, it's strictly top down. When you see people, they're not like tilting, so you see them slightly isometrically. You just see the top of their heads, and you see their feet pop out from their heads because you don't really see their bodies because you're looking straight down. But you could see their bodies in the shadow that's cast, halfway across the screen, and everything casts shadows like that. That, to me, that is weird enough to embrace and try to make, try to run with that ball, like make a story out of that, like do something really fun with that. Find all the permutations of interesting things you could do with just that, arbitrary limitation that you signed up to in the beginning. That I'm getting excited just talking about that. So that's really what I respond to. And it's unfortunate that isn't quite lined up with, big teams, big money, big, Call of Duty. It's like war. I mean, that's the design document.
I mean, it
seems
like
word.
They militarize this simulation, and then it trains people.
Don't get me wrong. I love those games. As a consumer, I play those games, and I love Doom Eternal. Like, what was it? It was Modern Warfare 2. What was the one that had the level no Russian? You know what I'm referring to? No Russian.
It's called. Sorry, I was muted. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That's the controversial mission, 2009 game, and the mass shooting at the Russian airport. Right.
Yeah. So that I am still stunned by that game and that particular level, because what they did was amazing to me, like emotionally and intellectually, everything. It just blew me away. Like, I was expecting, bang, 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 rotate, bang, rotate, bang, rotate. But it turned into like a moral test. And I'm proud to say I didn't shoot a single person. I made it through that entire level, and I didn't shoot one single person. And from the very first time I played it. And now I don't remember playing that game. I remember that experience like it was like it happened. It's like a memory rather than, I was playing a game. That's
a trip, because it's kind of like that Men in Black scene. Like, you pass the test by not shooting the wrong.
Yeah. I hope I didn't. That's not a spoiler, right? It's talking about
no. I mean, 2009. I think you're okay. But
there should be a limit on spoilers.
Oh yeah, that's why I stick to things from 1,000 years ago, right? As much as possible. Well, you actually just revealed something I hadn't really thought about much before, which is like, you've been making games way longer than your credits show. I mean, if you go to Wikipedia, it only really starts talking about your games in 1990 or so. So for 6 years, like, there are games that I don't know about, or that we don't know that you made. Like, what's up with that?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, there's some that you'll never know about because I simply forgot about them, and so I'm not going to be able to remind anybody about their existence. So that's just the unfortunate thing that happens as time goes on. And I made one game that I loved, and I lost it. The disc, the 5.25-inch floppy disk just stopped working. I don't even know why. And I couldn't afford to buy another one and back it up. Plus I was too lazy to back it up. So it just went away. And I lost hundreds of hours of work. And it was a cool game. I'm going to tell you about it. So you have a cursor, and then you just draw a maze with a joystick. Remember, the Atari joystick was just a stick and a button. And you just steer this little cursor on the screen around. And when you hold the button down, it would just like dig a tunnel. So you could draw a maze. And then wherever you put the cursor, you hit a key and you zoom in to the lines that you drew. And it becomes a dungeon that you drew. And then you could put little monsters and run around. And if you touch the walls, you'd get electrocuted and die and have to start over. So it was a make your own little dungeon crawl game. And it was so cool. It worked so great because the Atari had this GPU. It was called the Antic chip. I don't know what that is, probably an acronym, but what it did was gave you video mode. So there was really low res with a lot of colors and really high res with very few colors and like 6 steps in between. So the way my little Maze Master game worked is you drew the maze in the lowest res. And you drew it in the highest res. And then when you zoom in, it just stepped through the same memory, stepped through by changing the video mode. And it was like, zooming into the maze was so awesome. And I didn't even do it. It was just flicking the bits of the GPU. So there I am, like 1980, whatever it was. And it's like, oh, GPUs. And it's like, holy shit, that the idea of that having all this power that you could tap into, like services, like give me a player missile graphic, which was sprites. I could define the sprite, say, here's the memory of what the sprite cookie or, the shape should look like. And all I have to do is give it a pointer, and then the sprite would appear. The chip would do it for me. I wouldn't have to draw it. I wouldn't have to like erase the copy of the pixels that I move behind, from behind, and replace the background pixels, because that's the way you had to do it on computers like the Apple II. Like you just had pixels, and it was up to you to manage the background as you moved your little guys across the play field. So, but the Atari had sprites and had smooth scrolling hardware, play fields. You could have two. Was it two of them? No, that's a Genesis. But it did have smooth scrolling. It had collision detection, but it really didn't work that well. So you still had to do that on your own. But man, that just the power and the joy of interacting with a computer at the machine level and being able to do stuff like that in short order. It's like, this little guy that I made walking across the screen is walking too slow. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, now he's walking twice as fast. Tap, tap, tap. Now he's walking 100 times as fast. Oh my God, this is so fun. And it's like within 5 minutes, I tried 3 ways to enjoy that little guy. So then, that's when I was doing shit like that, it was, okay, there's no way I'm going to be a veterinarian. I mean, I'm not going to go there's no way I'm going to get into college, first of all, because I could not get A's in any other course than science. Even math was kicking my butt at that point. So I wasn't getting in anyway. So I said, okay, I'm diving in both feet first into games. And I forgot how I started.
Thank God, because I don't know. I just recently saw that movie Project X with Matthew Broderick, where he ends up training the monkeys to do the flight simulations.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, if you went to Carnegie, man, you would have been just doing military simulations. They would have been like, oh, he does math. Throw him in there. Yeah. Let's train dolphins to Ecco communicate, and then we would have never gotten to be the dolphins ourselves.
Yeah, cool.
That game we're going to have to remake, though. I think that sounds pretty awesome. It kind of reminds me of that new Duskers game where you're like in a COBOL station. I'll have to send you a link to. But so you made some of these crazy games, like they're just off the wall as far as I'm concerned. They're not like other games. I mean, and even it's like 2010 or 2007 or something before Nintendo even starts to kind of riff on some of the Annunziata ideas. Like this, I kind of feel like Super Mario Sunshine, and you start seeing all these other games that really kind of pick up on your ideas of, can we turn this around a bit? Can we learn from this game? Can this experience be a little bit more sophisticated than just left, right, shoot? It's like there's a little bit more strategy and a little bit more ethic, and it changes everything to play that kind of game, Like what Spider-Man is actually one of the first times in Sega Genesis where you see a game that starts to like pick up on that idea of the maze, of the bigger world, of dealing with characters, a double whammy. Like how did that happen? Like how did you end up? I didn't mean to ruin. That's a spoiler right there, but let's get into that.
soulmate connection with Spider-Man. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's like a big break thing.
I thought you were talking about the Spider-Man game that
it is. That's
I
I see them as tied together. Because you're obviously you love Spider-Man and you can identify with him. You're from his city and his time. You know, like if anybody can, it's going to be you. And you ended up making the Spider-Man game, like the good one. So how that happened, you know? Because that's pretty big.
Man, that was such a sweet little thing to say right there.
I was objective, man. It is. Like there were some, games at that time were trying to prove the games were good. Your games did that. Like, and I mean this objectively. Like one of the reasons I was trying to find you, even originally, like even before I wanted to meet you, I was like, I got to learn how to make games with high enough replay value. They put this in Game Informer today, the replay value of a game. Because a game isn't important unless its replay value is high. And we had that for a while with the Beowulf style of games. Before you saved the princess, you could die on the 58th level of Duck Hunt or, Star Wars Arcade. In an arcade machine, you'd want the replay value. So you've kept that replay value in home console games, mainly to it killed renting a lot of games because you need to buy the game. And at that time, that was the thing. People were like, I'll rent the game for 2 days, 5 days. No, you won't.
Yeah. You know that I dreaded the rental. It bugged me to no end that, Blockbuster got to make the money. And not that I made any of that money. It was more a principle of the thing. It's like
flaw in the system.
Come on, don't just let everybody play these games and then not buy them, because eventually all games will be free, and then they'll be free and everybody will play them, and then they'll try to make like you addicted to them, and then eventually, because the game compels you to buy in-app purchase items like consumables and durables, and I saw that horror coming, and it started with renting games. So the repeat play, get a little harder each time you go through. I guess it was a design trope back from the arcade games, which they weren't free to play, but they wanted you to constantly reach into your wallet, like the free to play games today. But back to Spider-Man. All right, so I collected comics when I was a kid, inspired by my older half brother Anthony. He used to sell me his kind of used comics that he wasn't interested in anymore. 6 for $1, which was at the time they were 15 cents a piece. So when Spider-Man showed up in the comics in my brother's stacks, that was always the one that looked the coolest. I think it was the eyes or just something about it. It just never really looked silly compared to like Thor constantly looks silly. The Hulk, come on, look like the Hulk. It just looks so. It was hard to like look at it seriously.
Beefy and grotesque.
Iron Man I think had it, but I just wasn't interested in the Tony Stark,
the gold
guy.
The gold era of comic books, they have all these capes, right? And then when they get to the 60s era, they really bring that West Coast wetsuit surfer kind of look without
spandex.
The cape. Spandex, yeah. And Spider-Man kind of really brings that whole thing. You're like, yeah, exactly.
Maybe he's the first to really. He's probably the trendsetter on that.
He's definitely a trendsetter. I love his whole thing.
May I point out, he's a New Yorker, so you're wrong about the West Coast influence on that.
I think Stan Lee, though, he had talked about how that was looking cool in the Gidget movies. People were watching, yeah.
Okay. You were talking about facts. I thought you were just making shit up.
But yeah, no, California is not New York, and it's actually a huge issue to our comic book scene. Icon comics are okay, but yeah, keep going.
All right, in love with Spider-Man, like all my life, collected the Spider-Man, and then it was like, it's 1962. Oh, we're kindred spirits. I realized that when I was 9, and so I always was into Spider-Man. And then there were some 8-bit Spider-Man games that were just horrible, and of course they were 8-bit. And then, in my opinion, this is probably wrong, but it seemed like all Marvel games, up until my first Spider-Man game, all Marvel games were just some, talented business guys / developers or publishers making a Marvel game, but not giving a shit about the IP. And you just get like mechanically something loosely related to the IP, like such as Spider-Man. Like for me, it was like, you got to look for like the inspiration. It was like more important than anything. It's like, where is like this like indescribable sense that an IP or a mythology gives you, this feeling that isn't just, well, it's a red suit and white eyes and they're kind of have like mascara look to them. Like those are the rules, but there's like a vibe or an inspiration that you could pick up on. So like I always look for the inspiration. And to me, the 16-bit Spider-Man graphically is inferior to even, any of the games that came out that same year. It was probably the most monochrome, kind of most not so good in the backgrounds.
I was actually about to say, I really like the cityscapes is one of my favorite parts of it, is the kind of Ninja Turtles riff.
Yeah, that was good. But like you go into Doc Ock's warehouse and you're like, oh, somebody must have spent an hour on this because it looks great.
Right.
So it was lackluster, but I think what it has like gobs of is like real inspiration of like how to make a play mechanic out of that character, like how to feel like Spider-Man, even just, very coarsely with just, a few gestures on the D-pad, but still feel kind of like Spider-Man. And the animations, like when he did his swing, if you hold on to the fact that you hold on to the web by holding down the button, and when you want to let go of the web, you let go of the button, that one-to-one relationship made you feel a little tiny bit like Spider-Man. And then when you see his animation where his head, he's not swinging on it like Tarzan from those 1950s shows. He's swinging on it like Spider-Man from like the modern Spider-Man.
Yeah, and he gets his little Slavic squat when he ties himself to the side of a wall,
Yeah, I mean, my favorite frame of his sprites in that game is his squat.
Totally.
And if you jump on a ceiling and then you wait and then I guess you hold the ceiling with one button and then you press up, he'll squat upside down, and it's just glorious to me. And then if you just let go of the D-pad, he'll stand, but he's still on the ceiling, so he stands upside down with his arms crossed. And I was like, that's Spider-Man. And I feel like, up until then, not that I kicked off, embracing the inspiration of an IP in the game somehow, but then I think everybody started to understand that, fans want what they want. They don't want like an interpretation from somebody who doesn't give a shit about the IP. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I that's one thing I know, like I could come in all confident that, at least the inspiration was there. So every time you say, oh, Ed, your games are too hard or too buggy or they're not polished enough or they're just too friggin' weird. Yes. I totally agree with all of that. But you're never going to say, Ed, your games are so uninspired and cliche.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think you've taught a lot of industries, not just video game. I mean, so you got to think about the earliest games before a lot of sound effects or voices and everything. They're kind of like silent films, and you've got like little scenes in between that are carrying the story forward. Granted, there's been, like Nintendo when they did Popeye to become Mario. That's they tried to do it and they gave up a lot of the time. A lot of IPs were giving up on, or a lot of games were giving up on IPs. You showing games that has translated, I think, to better comic book movies, because comic books movies did the same thing and nobody liked it. Like at the same time as you were making the changes in games, Tank Girl and weird early 90s, late 80s comic book movies, they were trying to really like get people that didn't understand the IP to deal with them. And that just didn't work. And it became, can you do it more like they do in the video games, where you're actually showing that, you're expressing this thing that we own that people care about, that was huge.
Yeah. So it when I had the opportunity to produce the game at Sega, I was like, and I remember at the time, the hot IP was Dick Tracy, because
Yeah.
Madonna was going to be in the movie. So it was a game, based on that movie IP. So it was going to be a big movie with big stars, and the game is going to come out right when the movie came out, and it was going to be huge. So everybody wanted to work on that, and there was Spider-Man. I was like, I'll work on Spider-Man, and I got it. And man, and it was a horror show. I had to cancel the first team, and
Give me a little bit more backstory. So, how did you get to Sony at that point? I mean, sorry, Sega. Sorry, how did you get to Sega at that point? Sony is the other people involved with Spider-Man right now that are causing trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Sega, and what was it like before this that you were able to? I mean, because it's a huge IP, really. I mean, how did you? Yeah. You're saying that Dick Tracy was so they swept under the rug?
Yeah. So Spider-Man was, what would be the equivalent today? It would be like it would be something that's not well known. I don't know, like comic books,
things that are out of date,
were nothing compared to movies. And I mean, comic books were nowhere in the pie chart of annual revenue for entertainment product.
Yeah, so, I guess there wasn't like a giant Spider-Man movie then either.
Way lower than that. Way infinitesimally compared to that was the video game industry. So like the video games are nothing. Comic books are just slightly more than nothing. And then there was like movies. And movies and TV was our entertainment. That's where most of the value was. That's the Super Bowl of entertainment media. That. So that's why if it's a movie, you're making a game based on it, it's better than, it's a little comic book. But that, obviously that changed over time. And but for me, not for 1 second did I think, if I do Spider-Man, then, a lot of kids are going to buy it, and then I'm going to accelerate my career and make a lot of money. None of that stuff even was considered. It was just Spider-Man. And if somebody was going to give me the money to make that game, and I would be the only one in the world that ever played it, I would have done it for sure, because that's all I wanted. I just wanted to make it, and I didn't consider anything else. So I just got lucky that nobody could give a crap about Spider-Man at the time, and I was like, I'll work on Spider-Man. And I was like, I came home. I was just to my wife and daughter. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing Spider-Man. She's like, yay! She's 2, she's jumping up and down. She had a fire red crib.
Wow!
And behind the crib was this beautiful poster of Spider-Man, the McFarlane #1 issue. You remember that?
Beautiful. Oh my God.
My daughter had
earliest
Spider-Man.
Gestalt, the earliest Gestalt symbolism.
Yeah.
How did that work out? Does your daughter love Spider-Man now?
No. She can give a shit about Spider-Man. And she doesn't care about games either. Although she loves board games and card games.
Oh, that's rad.
But anyway.
That's cool.
Anyway, what was I saying? All right, so that was Spider-Man. So then when I got to make the game, of course, I was loving life. And
so where did it all start?
Where did these games that have taken over our lives come from?
Well, we've come a long way since the days when little green machines relentlessly made their way to Earth. But Space Invaders is still remembered, along with the other arcade classics.
Since then, though, the machines have invaded the home, and we're in the middle of a revolution.
Yeah. Well, hold on just real quick. So, what was Sega?
How did I get to Sega?
Yeah, what was Sega to you? Because they're the other half of that marriage, I guess.
Jerry, è già pieno di gente qui. Che premi?
E vabbè, se proprio preme, falla entrare.
Jerry, manchi solo tu.
Un attimo! Uè, barbati, avete visto Mega Drive?
Divine!
Jerry, dov'è la gente? Devo cominciare il film! Va, rilassati, fammi finire la partita!
Sega Mega Drive è invincibile!
Ehi, calà! Hai capito Mega Drive? Eh sì, occhio però, sono giochi preziosi!
Oh, Sega. And oh my God. So I could think of that company and make myself get choked up at any time, on demand. That's how much it felt like family. Like,
wow.
I'm actually getting choked up right now. So I was there
Wow.
8 years, and just I guess maybe because it was a long time ago, and it was so fun. You know, that whole console wars thing, to be a part of that.
It broke my
and
heart
then,
even as an observer. I was like, I wanted to vow to never get game consoles again after the Dreamcast. I was like I was like 10 or 11. I spent all my money on a Dreamcast, and I didn't hate Sega when it fell apart. I hated the world for what they did to Sega.
Well, they made some pretty stupid moves, I'm gonna say, but that's what happens, you know. In retrospect, everybody makes stupid moves. But yeah, it was great. It was great, and I was in New York. I was working for a company and just doing educational software. I started out as a programmer, programming on the Apple II, and making educational games is another type of game I really love to make. And I did that for a long time. And then I had an opportunity to move out to California. And a headhunter called me from Sega. And I was like, please let me go and interview, because I really wanted to work on games again, like games. So yeah, I got the job. I was the first producer hired at Sega, Sega of America, SOA. And at my job interview, I pitched them Ecco the Dolphin. There were 4 guys, and it didn't go well. I showed them a little demo on my
Oh my
Mac,
God, really?
toaster.
You had like already, this is like, what year is this that you were already had?
89. So when I was working for Sunburst in New York, I was producing the educational games for a multimedia package called The Voyage of the Mimi. And what that was a 13-part PBS show, Ben Affleck's first paid gig.
I'm Ben Affleck, and I'm in the Arctic Test Chamber for the United States Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine in Natick, Massachusetts.
It's like 11 or 12 in this show, and it's about a little boy who spends the summer on his grandfather's boat to observe whales and record their behavior, etc. So they sail around the sea and they look at the spots on the tails of whales and try to remember configuration of spots so that they identify the whales and follow them around and stalk them and do whatever they're doing with the whales. But that also came with that Voyage of the Mimi show came with like 8 Apple II, science games. Like, here are the phases of the moon and the way the angle of insolation works. Like when you're tilted away from the sun, it's winter, but when you're tilted towards the sun, it's summer, and why that is. And, we made little simulations so you could test temperatures based on angles. And then there was one game that came with a thermistor, which is a thermometer that, wired up to the joystick port, and you could stick it in boiling water. And then on the Apple screen, it would say 200 degrees, 212 degrees. And then you could hit a button and turn it to a centigrade, And so I worked on all those games but paid attention to all the stuff about the whales. And then I started to get really interested in sea mammals in general. The first idea that hit me hard was their brains are so much bigger than ours. Like, I mean, even a dolphin, like a dolphin's brain is like twice the size of your brain, like physically. And I was like scratching, no pun intended, I was scratching my head about that. I was like, why do they have such a big brain? And wait a minute, could they be like 10 times, way smarter? We just don't know it because they're like just not talking to us. And I just got into that idea and always loved science fiction. So starting to think of it in terms of a more science fiction-y kind of way. And then I realized the whole echolocation thing is they need all this gray matter to visually process sound, like to turn very low fidelity information, which is just, vibrations in water, into a 3-dimensional live images that they could experience in their minds. And it's like, oh, that's why they need such big brains. So the whole echolocation, seeing with sound thing really fascinated me. So then it wasn't just, whales are swimming around with big brains. There are like video cameras swimming around, like everything they see, they can remember in their brains. Like I see this landscape, this underwater landscape, let's say, and I remember it. And then I swim away, and then a year later, I go up to another sea mammal and I say, a year ago, I was here, and then sing that image into the mind of the other, and that other could see what I saw before. So if you could see my memories, I mean, how intimate is our relationship? If like I could talk till I'm blue in the face and describe my brother to you, but if I was a sea mammal and so were you, I would just go and you'd see my brother. My description would never do it justice compared to like, here's my brother. And by the way, here's my brother in 3 dimensions. Oh, and by the way, here's my brother, and look what he had for lunch. Because it's all sonogram, live sonogram that could be converted into virtual reality. Now my mind is blown about these creatures. And then the whole physics of being a dolphin, the play mechanic of being a dolphin was just so perfect. So to me, I'm not saying it is perfect. I'm saying relative to my sensibility.
It'd be radical to play as a game, but it would be terrifying to have your skeletal body, arms, fingers, and toes trapped inside of a skinny body. I mean, right? Because they have a whole human skeleton. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, those fingers are like in these mittens forever.
You cannot write if you're a dolphin. That's a bummer.
Yeah. But I guess it's a trade-off. How do we get onto Ecco?
Well, you were saying it was a plan, it was a dream you had basically to make this game from when you were making Mimi.
Oh yeah. So I pitched it at our interview meeting, our first interview meeting at Sega when I interviewed there in '89. And then when I tried, I made a bunch of games.
And they weren't down. They didn't think it was.
No, I got shot down again and again.
What did they say?
I was really shy too.
What did they? Okay, yeah.
Like I wouldn't like get up there. Come on, everybody!
No, it's a dolphin. Yeah.
It just seemed preposterous because it's like no pockets, no inventory, no guns. You don't shoot. Like what do you do?
Off the wall.
Yeah, and it's like, and I kept saying, what a valuable thing is that it's never been like it's never been done before.
It's a whole new world of games. Yeah.
And I tried to push the sine wave, the beauty of going between buoyancy and gravity, like, in and out of the water. That to me is the perfect part of Ecco. And I'm trying to push this. It's like, it will, it feels good. Like, cause I had that part working. And but nobody would go for it. It's never been done before. It had no weight. In fact, that's a negative. Well, if it's never been done before, it's probably a reason for it, Ed. So
in the future, when we're just inventing stuff, man. Oh.
Yeah, that's not a good thing to say. Maybe somebody never said that, but similar things were said. There was this meeting that we had. It was right, it was like Genesis versus Nintendo, and it was right at the beginning. It wasn't E3. It was CES in Vegas at the time, and Tom Kalinske was the new president. Took over from Mike Katz, and gave this speech that really, it's like it was almost as if like, hey Tom, here's a speech. Read this. Because it was like, for me, it was like perfect. So we're in this giant like room at the Alexis Park Hotel in Vegas, and he's given this speech, and the entire Sega of America company, I think, or everybody that was at CES, I don't know how many people were there, but there was like, giant round tables, like at a wedding, like big round tables with people sitting all around each one of them. There's like probably 10 of those big tables. Everybody was eating. Tom gets up on this little stage and gives a speech, and he's
oh wait, you're can you start over? There was a clip. There's a cut there just now.
No, I'm sorry, you missed it.
No, you started the speech.
All right, so he starts the speech and he says, we have to do things that have never been done before. And I perk up and I look around my table, and Al Nielsen is there, and Hugh Bowen is there, and Madeline Canepa, and I can still see it. And after his speech, I turn to Hugh and I'm like, Tom says we should do something that's never been done before. And then, hey, and then I got to pitch that table, and they all happened to be marketing people. Al was, I don't know what his title was, but he ran the show. Like, he's Sonic, and he ran all of Sega marketing. And I got to pitch him passionately a game that's never been done before, right after the president of the company said, we got to do something that's never been done before. So it was like so perfect. And from that day, it wasn't called Ecco then, it was called Dolphin. So Dolphin started to show up. I mean, they never even said, hey, Ed, yeah, you're going to do this. I just saw it like show up on, roadmap paperwork, and I was going to say emails, but no emails back then. Anyway, so then that nailed it for me. That one moment. So,
wow, that's it's just like completely world shattering. And one of the things I've been thinking about when you're saying this about dolphins and their echolocation, it's interesting in terms of brain size increase. Also, if you look at a dolphin's brain, or orcas in general, just different kinds of cetacean whales, the increases are not necessarily the same universally. Some parts of the brain are bigger, and other parts, like, because they use echolocation, that part
visual
of the brain,
processing. Yeah.
Visual processing is increased in the middle frontal gyrus. But what's really interesting to me is the supramarginal gyrus, because that's this kind of like center part of the back of the brain. It's enlarged a lot. It's like really wide, kind of like a frontal gyrus is, and it's usually this small rounded part, and that's where a lot of empathy happens. And so there's been like documentaries that talk a lot about the idea that dolphins have high empathy. And you were just talking about echolocation. I was thinking about this. That this idea of six senses. How many senses do you think exist? Like touch, taste, sight, all these kinds. Smell. The five senses. If you really start to analyze them, your sound is coming through vibrations. You've got eardrums. Your eyes have plates that are being hit with touch to make photo reactions. And your tongue also relies on tongue touch. So you start to like deplete, your ears, your sight, your taste, even your nose. Everything is touch based. But because we know you can't touch anything because of electrostatic, it's really empathy. It's just this idea of awareness of the other thing being touched. So dolphins might be the ultimate. I mean, at least in terms of mammals we've dealt with, it seems like they might be the ultimate machine for perceiving what is interacting. And that's this crazy level of awareness. That's like this mapping technology I think it's the first thing humans think about is mapping. But like, what do you think? Yeah. Like what about dolphins? What about dolphins, Ed?
So when you get on the bus, the dolphin bus, and start to think these kinds of things, and continuously start to think those kinds of things, and go through time, then you start to like, wait a minute, if this is true, then this must be true. And if this is true, I could imagine. And so I think about it like as if, all right, I'm a dolphin, right? I'm in the middle of the ocean. So I'm floating in complete darkness and just floating. And even when I sleep, only half of my brain sleeps because the other half has to make sure my blowhole stays above the surface of the water. So, there's this, it's so lonely that the presence of another would mean everything. Like right now, I'm up in this beautiful mountain and I can see the ocean, and I'm sitting on this nice bench and I'm looking around at nice trees and I see some people far away. And I'm like, I could give a shit. I'm talking to you. I'm fine. But if you're in the middle of the ocean for a long, long time, alone in darkness, at night, there's no light, 4 feet down, it's black. The presence of another is going to mean a lot to you. And that, I think that's why their empathy muscle evolved to be so strong. The connection with others is everything. They probably think of reality as not like the ocean and the ocean floor and the sky and the clouds and the water surface. They probably think of reality as these individuals, and that, sort of are around me sometime, and I'm aware of their XYZ coordinates at all times, and at any time I could see what they see if they allow me to. It's like, that's reality. So it's like they're definitely seeing things differently, and I could feel that's true, because one behavior that they have, that they do a lot, and it's like the entire species does it, is a pair of dolphins will try to mirror each other exactly, like as if it's a game. It's like, we have to be exact, and they do that, and that sort of spatial anchoring in blackness has to have a lot of meaning. And the fact that they are aware of their subtle body movements when they're swimming together, but they look like there's a mirror in between them. You could see that connection to another is so. I mean, when do we do that? Like, we don't ever mirror each other exactly in a black room where all we could see is each other. See what I'm saying? So the connection is apparent to me, and that thrills me. And then, it's like, here, I'm doing a lot of stuff in virtual reality now, and that's a whole different reality. And I think about, like, what I'm seeing is a reality that's being pulsed, like you said, like my little retina cells are getting poked by photons being pumped into my eyes from a computer. So it's projecting a reality to me. And if it was another person, that, like, you put a hat on and I take the wire from your hat and put it onto my hat, I could see what you want me to see. Like, you could project a virtual reality. If you could show me your virtual reality and I could show you yours, that's a big deal, because come on, Andreas, come to my dream. Let's have a dream together. Let's be in this virtual reality. Let's play Beat Saber together, and I'll be the one that projects that reality into your mind. So
at that point, it becomes beyond a game. Yeah,
I know that sea mammals do that. They make virtual reality, and they exist in that, and that's where they store their information and their wisdom and their history. It's all in this virtual reality that lives decentralized in their brains,
So you didn't really like John C. Lilly and all this other stuff about dolphins and stuff. You found out at that point, basically, right? Or did you look into that?
I was a Lilly fan. I was always a Lilly fan. And
wow.
that fascination came from, I worked in a psychiatric hospital as a mental health worker, and mental health and group therapy. And I was just a mental health worker. So what I did was, drive the patients around to volleyball games and AA meetings, and then at night, poke my head in their rooms, make sure they're breathing, and then do a little check mark, do that 12-hour shifts. So, but I got connected to mental health professionals, and they were really, really smart and really inspired me. So I started to get into this whole idea of meditation, and then I got into this whole idea of LSD, and then I wouldn't try it because I heard about the bad trips. So I read about it, and I think I even read something that Carl Sagan wrote, but I don't know. So I started reading about LSD, and because I really wanted to try it, but ultimately I chickened out because I'm afraid of my own imagination. So, but I was really into it, and then I started to learn more about sensory deprivation. And that's my connection to Lilly. I did the float tank thing for 2 hours naked in Epsom salt soaked water for 2 hours in total darkness, feel anything. I couldn't feel anything. The temperature is perfect. There's no sound. It's completely dark. You're floating in a medium that you cannot feel. And after 15 minutes of that, you're fucking floating in outer space and there's nothing there. And that the loneliness and the darkness just stunned me. And it's like, this has to be what dolphins go through, or sea animals in general at night. And that really turned me on. So then I did more research about this sensory deprivation or float tanks, and then it led to Lilly. And then I was blown away to find out that after taking 300 micrograms of LSD, he comes out of his float tank after 4 hours and proclaims that he is going to study dolphins and dolphin language. And that's like, he wrote that. That's what happened. So then I read Center of the Cyclone and some other stuff, but I knew he was off. Like, I knew he was like a Timothy Leary kind of, a little too into the drugs. And I was too afraid to personally try LSD. So I had to pull away from him a little bit. And I did see Ecco, ECCO. And I did read about like the weird shit that he was doing with dolphins back then, I think. But I didn't even come up with the name Ecco. Al Nielsen, who, remember I said, was in charge of marketing. I think he was senior vice president of marketing at Sega of America. He said, no, you can't call this Dolphin, because that was the name, Dolphin. And he said, oh, you gotta call something else. I'm like, well, what are you gonna call him? And he's like, well, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're all named after artists. I'm like, oh, that's right. They are pretty cool. And he said, how about Botticelli, the Dolphin? And I thought he was kidding.
Oh, my Lord.
I thought he was kidding.
Al Nilsson looks like my dad, too. I totally feel it.
Yeah, he's so awesome.
He would have said that, too.
I was like, no. And I panicked. And I couldn't come up with a name. And it was my boss, Clyde Grossman, came up with Ecco, ECHO, echolocation. I'm like, oh, perfect. And then I just changed the H to a C just to make it unique. And also in Italian, Ecco means I see it. Like, hey, where's the sneakers?
Right.
Where's the sneakers?
Ecco is neuter. Ecca is feminine. Echo is masculine. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but Ecco, when you're hanging out in Italy and somebody says, where's the peanut butter, and you see it, you point to it, you go Ecco, and that Ecco means I see. But loosely. Yeah. So I was like,
sure.
that's perfect.
It does. It means there it is, I think, in Latin. It's like, okay, it's totally, that's ancient. That's amazing. I hadn't even thought about.
So that was all turned down. Now, the hell with Dolphin. What a lame name. Who came up with that? Ecco is perfect. So it had nothing to do with the coincidence control Earth organization or nothing whatsoever.
I never took that. Well, that's good. Yeah. But at least you didn't necessarily think it did, but it seems kind of weird, right? That of all things, you ended up calling, somehow the universe forced it to be the same thing that the universe forced, SETI comes out of the Order of the Dolphins because they were inspired by John C. Lilly's whole Ecco, stuff. I find that interesting that Ecco would come up. Do you think that there is anything weird, like serendipitous about that? Like, do you believe that when you're out there, you are literally just alone, or do you feel like we're part of this energy, like university or pan universe thing? Do you feel like?
Yeah. I do.
Oh, you said that. All right. So shoot.
Yeah, it really is true. What am I going to do? Beat them or join them?
Right.
So at the beginning of creation, there was a singularity. It was like one thing. So obviously everything is connected because everything came from that one thing. So everything is connected to every molecule, every photon, every quark is connected to every single other one in the entire universe if you look at it through time. So everything comes from that one little singularity, right? So therefore we are already connected, and you could see it in everything, like the quantum entanglement.
Quantum entangled.
Right. That's like there, boom, evidence right in front of our faces that it is just one thing that you're just looking at from different angles. So yeah, we're all connected, and maybe it expresses itself on a level where it could be seen, like, whenever there's like a big movie that comes out, there's always two of them, like Jurassic Park, and then there's like, Killer Dinosaur, like another movie. And it's like there's always there's ideas that occur, and then there's like multiple versions of that same idea, but always at the same time, it seems to me. So maybe there is this sort of an overriding influence of the nature of the universe that steers ideas, and things eventually happen or emerge based on some plan or, previously set up parameters of the universe. So, yeah, I guess I buy it.
That might be fair as an answer. Okay, so basically you pulled off pretty good with Dungeons and Dragons. I think that's a good piece of, I guess you could say, like, street cred, because if you could make a decent Dungeons and Dragons simulator, that's pretty rough, and to do it in 92 is probably almost impossible. So they're like, all right, this guy knows what he's talking about. We're gonna let him make Ecco the Dolphin. Is that how that went down? Basically?
Yeah, no. They had to quit. There was a little bit of drama, but it all worked out. On the what was it called? Warriors of the Eternal Sun. It was the original title was Hollow World, and it was based on a new world in the the TSR/D&D universe, where the concept was the Earth is hollow, and there's like, it's really a Star Trek idea. This planet is hollow, and inside is cities and mountains, but they're all on like the walls of the empty sphere of the Earth, the hollow world, and nobody knows there's like an outside part. So this entire D&D campaign, I guess, or this game takes place in the hollow world. And that was a fun project to work on, because I was really into D&D, and it was one of the projects, like Spider-Man, I begged to get, and I did successfully. I begged for a lot of other titles, opportunities, but didn't get. But this one I did. And the other interesting thing about it, and the last thing I'm going to say about it, is even though it never expresses itself in a lot of ways, all the D&D rules at the time, are in code, and they're happening. But as a user, as a player, you just never detect that. But what was just beautiful was that, TSR and SSI insisted that these rules occur, like, to the letter. Like, the paper rules had to be expressed digitally, with code. And I respected that so much, because that, that they valued their IP, and they wanted to make sure, it did those rules, even though they were meaningless in a video game context. But yeah, that's a great game. Most people don't know it had anything to do with it. Or actually, most people don't know it exists. Of those people who don't exist, most do not know I have anything to do with it, or most do not know me.
Burn. Well, I mean, another interesting link, though, is TSR and SSI, right? Because SSI is solid state intelligence, which was the enemy of Ecco. I mean, according to Lilly. That's pretty funny.
Wow, you're a connection maker, huh?
I'm apophenia, I think they call it apophenia, where you like just connect things. I like how I like to remember things. But
you have a memory castle?
Yeah, totally. I have a memory tower with like floors that are different colors. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Are you a Hannibal fan?
The show or the? Yeah, I think it's a good show.
Man, what a great show that was.
I was wondering if you meant like Hannibal of Carthage.
No.
I was no. I like him more. But yeah, I try to be careful with the memory palace, because be careful what you keep in there,
because you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that idea of, well, you can, but it's like it takes like special kinds of effort to do that kind of thing, and to hide.
Well, don't you just? Oh, you literally hide something?
Oh yeah, you can like subconsciously sometimes you want to remember something in quotations. So you want to put it somewhere that's behind something so that you have to move the thing that's easy to remember to find what's behind it. Yeah.
I think you should do a quick summary of what a memory tower is.
Okay, so a memory palace, at least, is this palace. Well, palace is the ancient tradition of having a memory system of memories in your head created in a physical space, in a psychological physical space. So sort of like Ecco the Dolphin has a map, you'd create a map in your mind, and the dolphin can navigate that map. You can navigate your palace, and you can have rooms, and in those rooms you put things that you want to remember. And there's ways, but the thing that you do is you take things you already remember and you decorate this palace with them, and then you start putting the things you want to remember with the things you already remember. And once you've got angles and walls and depth, and you kind of have arranged it, then you can go from room to room and remember where things are. And if you have floors, then you can also separate into floors. And if you have different colored rooms, there's different ways to separate memories. And so it's very useful.
It's about like lists of things.
Yeah,
if you have a lot to remember, you can use your memory palace to
it helps to do visualizations too, because you can remember sheets of paper even in certain circumstances. I'm not like there are people that are just straight up savants that can remember encyclopedias. I'm not one of those exactly, but I can remember a lot of quotes and things like that.
But a mechanism for the way those people do it is something similar to, or maybe even specifically, the memory palace.
Right. They can use actually sometimes something stripped down. There's like techniques they study a lot where you take the words, kind of like the Winnie the Pooh movie, and you shuffle the words on the page and you remember where they are, like Tetris in weird ways. I can't quite do that. I think it's amazing though.
Yeah. What I love about the memory palace mechanism is the first thing you do is build the palace in your mind. So first thing you're doing is building this building, and you have to remember it. And every time you go to visit it, it has to be the same. So you decide what color it is, how big it is, the front door, what the interior kind of looks like, cube, white walls. And this is a space that you make in your mind. And then the memory palace mechanism for helping you remember stuff is, you take a thing, you imagine it in the room. And then when you go back to that room the next day, even though you're not even thinking about that thing, when you go into the room, the thing will be there. Like some part of your brain will say, oh, this is the room that had this thing. And you'll remember it. And it's sort of like, it's a good mechanism for memory, and that those connections. It's forcing you to make multiple connections to a specific piece of information, as opposed to letting it float out there on its own. So the only reason why I keep talking about this is because I just want to say one thing. Imagine if I could project to you right now my memory palace, and you could explore it. If we were dolphins, I say we could do that. I could say, here's my memory palace, have at it. And I think that's mind-blowing.
There's a series of books that try to train people how to build dream cottages, dream spaces that they share together. And it seems like it's a pretty common idea in terms of, there's like a SpongeBob episode even where they cross into each other's dreams. That seems, and you were saying like dolphins creating that space. I think with like neural link, but even with just VR in sensory deprivation, the capacity of people to go in each other's subconscious, that's probably pretty possible. I mean, what kind of things do you think that's going to open up though for, telepathy or like human study? Like how's that going to change us if we have that?
I don't know. So it's definitely going to change us. And it's hard for me to imagine that as a human. It's funny. I could totally imagine it as a dolphin. Wires in my brain, a chip in my brain, because I don't want to type. I don't know.
No, seems like, it's not about typing. So think of it more like what you said earlier. Like I think what Elon Musk said was, if I wanted to send a sexual experience to a more open-minded friend, that's what Elon Musk said. But if you wanted to send I would say a YouTube like experience. Like we could have all of their New Year's celebrations on iVision, and it could, so instead of a joke where I tell you a guy walks into a little person walks into a bar, but it's your little person walking into your bar. So it can be perfect. It's exactly yours. And if it's a little person walking into a bar, it's not the same. So there's a certain amount of hypothetical, which is good because we can create with our imaginations. And if we take that away, because all of a sudden you experience other people's experiences, I mean, we'll be
like a movie.
Yeah. Or like life. Like imagine you go like a dream, like you feel it because you run the emotions of this person's experience, you know, and so through your body, like the Matrix, you feel Saving Private Ryan. And if you're, you know, young, it might be really intense or something. Or maybe that's the way that we build up people as we stack experiences. And then that becomes, you know, maybe an entire class of people who have access to experiences other people don't have, you can't afford, you know, or free experiences that make us all the same, you know.
It seems like the danger is the line between me and you get blurred. Like I don't know, is this my dream or is this my friend's dream? And it doesn't matter, because if I'm experiencing it, it's still mine. Or who am I? That's where I don't even want to say it's where the danger is. That's where the adaptation is going to need to be. This feeling of blending with another mind. We're going to have to get used to that. We're going to have to change. We're going to have to redefine self, I think, when it gets to that level.
Yeah, I think privacy isn't even it's self. That's an interesting, this is what goes away in a sense, I guess.
I'm showing you my memory palace. You're showing me yours. I dream your dreams. You dream mine. You dream mine, which are really yours to begin with. You don't know it, but I'm dreaming your dream. You're dreaming my dream. Wait a minute, you're really just dreaming your dream, and I'm dreaming my dream, which is dreaming your dream. And it's like, who's who? What? Who is going to be who? If we could share each other's minds like that.
If you can Airbnb into somebody else's body for a weekend to avoid plane tickets.
Man. How is that not going to be the best thing in the world?
It's going to be interesting because consciousness is going to be treating bodies like cars, I guess. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
We probably should separate our bodies from our minds in that way.
Yeah. It's all fun. It's all fun and games till somebody gets hurt.
This is an interesting foreshadowing for the game itself, right? Because the idea of Ecco fighting against this Vortex Queen, which is kind of, am I wrong? It's a singularity of machine internet noosphere. Is that what would you describe the Vortex Queen as in opposition to the Ecco?
Well, she's a queen. She's a queen, like an ant queen, and there's like a whole like little backstory to the Vortex, and so I know what it is. I like your interpretation.
Tell me the right one.
I might. So it's all fake, first of all. All right. So this is what I liked about the Vortex. First of all, it's H.R. Giger monsters. It's the alien from the Alien movie.
Totally.
And that's the scariest alien ever. So we need to make a scary alien. Well, let me think. So there it is. And but it's obviously an insect. And this whole thinking about gamifying biology, even though I'm not saying that the 0.5 megabyte cartridge of Ecco the Dolphin does that, but I love the idea of the hive mind and evolution. And, you know, it's not the evil vortex, it's the hungry vortex. And, you know, sharks are hungry. And, you know, dolphins just like chew living things until they die, and then they swallow them every day. And so it's like this horror between the jaws of everything. And it's the Vortex is no different. And but the thing I liked about it is, and it's a bit of a spoiler, but nobody really cares. But at the end of Ecco 2, there's some text that explains that the Vortex are here. They integrated with us.
Right.
They're crabs, and they're the 8-legged things. They're the insects.
Did you see that article recently that said crabs have evolved like 50, 60 separate times from completely separate backgrounds into the same shape of crab? And that they don't understand why it keeps happening. But it's just like such a logical thing for an exoskeleton thing to shape with that mathematical form.
What that means is the crab is somewhere in the fabric of the universe. If the universe keeps making crabs from completely different angles, and they keep coming up with a crab, there's something in the universe that says we need crabs. And
the Vortex offensive. It's literally, you made this happen, Ed. It's all you.
It's all crazy. It's all a simulation.
It is a really weird fact. I mean, that's the shape of all the shapes that keeps coming back is literally the one that you put into the video game. So that's weird.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely fun to gamify science or science fiction. It's fun to think that way. And it must be fun for you. And I can't remember what it was that you called yourself. Someone who's obsessed with making connections that are very hard to see.
I think it's apoppheniac. Maybe it might be
apoppheniac.
Yeah, I think that would be how you call it. I never actually made that. I never conjugated it that far. But yeah, must be what apoppheniac. Oh, I like it.
It actually sounds like it could be a good game. But that's where we are. And I'm looking at the clock, and we've been at this for an hour and a half. Can we stop? I got like a little, not a product, but I got like a little something about the Vortex coming that I'm going to push out, on my channel and stuff. So that might be a good time. I'll hit you up, and then you can give me an opportunity to talk about it.
Beautiful.
This
has been mind blowing, and it's really awesome. All of the backstory. So thanks a lot for coming on.
All right, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Have a good walk home.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Targaryens.
Recent Targaryens. Recent Targaryens.